Welcome to the BIP Ventures Extraordinary Pursuits podcast, a fascinating and inspiring journey into the world of venture capital and startups. Each episode offers masterclasses and entrepreneurial stories from some of the top minds in the innovation economy. Get ready to unlock new ideas and gain valuable advice for how to thrive as an innovator and an investor. Today on Extraordinary Pursuits, our Christy Johnson talks with Michelle Seger, the COO and partner for SalesGlobe. SalesGlobe helps companies solve complex sales challenges by connecting their sales strategies to the bottom line. In all they do, they keep their focus on helping clients to achieve profitable growth. Michelle helps leaders solve their biggest sales challenges so they can drive better revenue growth. At SalesGlobe, she oversees the private equity consulting services practice. She's an expert in sales change management and has deep experience with M&A and the modern sales coverage model. She joins Christy today to discuss the crucial distinctions between ideal client profiles and buyer personas, ways to optimize resources and create market relevance by focusing on specific market segments, and what tools early-stage companies can use to take a strategic approach to growth and earning market penetration. Let's get started.
So, Michelle, a lot of the companies that we work with are fairly early. They have probably a handful, maybe 40 customers. They have probably a lot of variety in what those customers look like because they've spent a year or two trying to get product market fit. And oftentimes when this is the first institutional money that they've taken on, and they're now in a position where we're talking about get focused and really understand your ICP. And for them, that doesn't necessarily resonate. And so maybe talk a little bit about sort of what that process looks like, and then as a follow-up to that, why that's so important.
That's a great question. And as I was thinking about our podcast today, I was thinking about SalesGlobe. Now, as you know, we consult with Fortune 1000 companies. However, we are a niche consulting firm. We are founder-led. Maybe our revenues are a bit larger than your portfolio companies, but I wouldn't say, 10 to 20 times larger. So I was drawing some parallels as we think about that and ICP. So let's talk about what ICP is. And I think it would be interesting also to talk about what segmentation is and, how these play together and even the buyer persona. So when I think about, do people know that is the client profile, the ideal client profile? And when I think about why it's important that we understand this, it's because it can help you, along with segmentation, really do three things in your business. One would be resource optimization. So we all know that as a small business, your resources are limited, whether it's your salespeople, your delivery, the ability to manufacture. If you're manufacturing, you don't want things to just blow up. The second thing is it allows you to have relevance in the marketplace and really with the experience that you want to offer to your clients. If you know who your ideal client profile, if you know what it is, then you're going to be able to service them in a way that they want to be serviced. Thirdly, it helps you offer the best products and services that you're equipped to offer. When I think about, and what do I mean by that? Ideal client profiles, it's everything from who are the clients that have come back time and time again, right? You look at, how do you start? By looking at who you've done business with. So who are the ones that keep coming back again and again, and that are satisfied with your product and service? And then why? And you may find that, okay, it's because they align very well with how we're able to deliver our product and service, the timing of that, the regions that you service, whatever that might look like. So I love to take a look at the ideal client profile by thinking about who's buying from us and why are they happy with us, right? And we also think about, so this is going to sound almost like modeling or something, because we like to think about it as two things, fit and attractiveness. So when we think about the fit of an ideal client for you and your company, think about like the suit that you're wearing today. It fits you very well. You look really good today. So, Christy, and yet it could be an ill-fitting suit, right? So it doesn't really fit maybe with how you can go to market today, and are you stretching too far to get there? Let me give you an example of that. We have a lot of clients that come to us. We do sales effectiveness consulting, right? So we're not selling hard products. We're selling services. And we focus in areas like the coverage model. We build segmentation in territories. And we enable a sales team, the sales organization. We do not, however, service and provide solutions for the marketing organization. We are sales, but we'll often be asked if we can help them with a marketing plan or a marketing strategy. That's not really a fit for what we do. Now, we could make it fit, but it would be a little ill-fitting, and it might be better if we just focus on that which fits best with our business. Attractiveness, ideal client profile, gets back to that again. So who bought from us, and what makes it attractive for us? Well, was it profitable? How profitable was it? Are they easy to do business with? Easy to do business with, I'm not talking about personalities. We all have to deal with those. But we're able to accommodate what their needs are and meet what their biggest challenges are. So those are some of the things that, I think about, and I say start with who you're doing business with today. And then you can use that to inform as you look at an addressable market getting a little bit broader than who you serve today. You can use that to inform who your ideal client profile would look like, who it should look like based on the broader market once you've identified these attributes. It would be remiss for us to, talk about ideal client profile without talking a little bit more broadly about segmentation.
Yep, and I was actually going to ask you because I think that that's something, those three things like market segmentation, ICP, buyer persona, those all feel like somewhat the same thing. Do you have a recommendation in terms of order of operation and which comes first?
So I think it's really easy. You could do a couple in parallel. Let's talk about, I guess, how you start. And I always like to start, instead of looking at a broader market of, we'll call it greenfield. So greenfield, where you've never done business before. I like to start with white space and maybe a little greenfield, but based on proposals and bids that you've made. So I say maybe greenfield because maybe you didn't win them all. But for some reason, you were able to get it to the proposal stage, right? So I like to look at everything that we proposed. I like to understand the win-loss across those, right? So that would be like internally. And then you can look externally, meaning at external data. So how would I start looking internally? I like to look at where you won and your current. So look at your current business that you've got, business that you had closed on and you delivered and you're done, right? That's how you can start to look at your client profile. As you look at your segments, I even look at pipeline, right? So you want to look at more than just what you did historically, but what did you win? Maybe you've closed, it's in your pipeline, it's got a high probability, whatever that looks like. Include that when we look at segments. So ideal client profile can be done almost in parallel, but it's looking at something a little bit different. Clients that I've serviced today, because it's the easiest way to start, look at key things around them like we mentioned, right? So what are things that are attractive to us and how do they fit with us? So how easy is it, or how can we deliver our products and services? How profitable are they? Can we actually solve the root cause problems? Are they one and dones when we really want recurring business? Will they ever be recurring? You're looking at things like that on your client profile. Segmentation, which again, we can broaden that to where you lost, what you won. Look at everything you've got in-house, internally. And you're looking at things like, I like to start at the top of that, very top, vertical. And I say vertical instead of industry because a vertical could be private equity. A vertical could be healthcare. You could get deeper in healthcare and say, gosh, are we actually servicing pharmaceuticals, farm animal, or prosthetic devices? And I bring those three up because guess what? We have a big following and a lot of business that we provide into animal health, farm animal, and pet health, believe it or not. But we don't play as much in pharma, and their needs are a little bit different, right? So when we look at segmentation, we want to look at, I like to go a little deeper than SIC codes, look at the base that you've got and say, okay, how do we want to verticalize our business? How does that make sense for us? So it might be retail, manufacturing, the common things you think of, automotive. It might be private equity, consultants. It might be, providers of software providers, or it just might be different how you choose to segment your business depending on what you sell. So then once we identify that, you want to look at some, what we call them firmographics, right, about that company. So what's the size of the company, maybe the geographies that they're serving. But then you also want to get a little bit more specific. If I am selling, let's say, equipment into hospitals, I talked about healthcare for a moment, I might want to look at things like the number of beds. If I am a B2B selling, well, a lot of people are working from home right now, but let's say copiers and print services, right? Because people are coming back into the office. I might be looking at number of white collar workers, right, that are there. So you start looking at firmographics and demographic information about the company, two separate things, to help you identify the segment that you're serving. And if you look at that based on your internal clients, that you have maybe won or lost, but anyone that's come to you, you start to get a feel for, oh, this is the type of customer that I have served before. So that's how I kind of look at segmentation and how it's a little bit different from your client profile. It's not about, their fit and their attractiveness, but you're really trying to understand the market, the industry. And then you have to go a little bit deeper and you kind of understand, you want to do some market analysis on that industry or that vertical that you've identified. So you might say, okay, what are the pain points? You may have some information internally, but look, in this world of AI and the ability to Google almost anything under the sun, you could enter in 15 or 20 clients, I know you can, company names into AI and a couple of attributes and say, tell me, what are the biggest things that companies like this are solving for today? Now, we have business intelligence experts that do that on behalf of SalesGlobe, but we started leveraging AI to do that. And it's easy, Christy.
Well, and I'm just curious, what is the correlation? So if you have industry experts and you go to ChatGPT and you're asking that question, how accurate have you found it?
So it's always going to have, it depends. So my marketing director will say, it depends if you're using the paid version or the free version, because you can get a little more specific. It can make mistakes. So what does that mean by make mistakes? It's fairly accurate though. And I always like to say that we put a human element upon the AI. And that's how we have worked it most effectively. So we don't take it 100%, but I can tell you that it saved our business intelligence team time.
Right.
It really has. Get you there, it'll get you the 70%, but also where it really saves you time, it can go out and pull even annual reports on these companies. And it'll pull so much information that our team would actually manually read through all of that information. Because what you're trying to understand when you're going through segmentation is ultimately not just of course you want to know the revenues of that company, but then you also want to know their propensity to buy your products and services based on what their biggest challenges are. And you can really assess yourself and say, can I meet that or not? And I love to take that information and use that to inform your value proposition, which is nothing more than, what do my people say? What does marketing say? What does my front line say? How do we engage with that client? Like, what's the story that we go to them with? And by looking at the external information, as well as any notes, things that your salespeople, be sure to talk to your salespeople. They know everything that's going on with your clients. I think sometimes we forget to ask them. Sometimes if we do have a marketing team out there, we forget to say, who opened what? What was the response rate?
Or your customer success team. They're the ones dealing with the customers and who knows who's most successful and what those profiles look like. They always innately understand the difference between a good customer and a bad one. So that always seems to be the best place to start. And then it can be codified by the salespeople because they're seeing it on the front end with the prospects.
I completely agree with you. And I think what happens is that CEOs of a company that's being asked to scale, because they're looking at pretty aggressive growth, it can seem daunting. And the first thing that they ask us about that they want to do is go out and buy data. Like they want to know if they should buy lists and get information. And what they don't realize is that they have a lot of information, even if they've got a handful of clients, less than 50. They proposed probably more than that, right? So even if you think about, which would be high, 25%, win rate, they've got at least 200 clients that they can start to cull and look through. And I always ask them to start there because it gets too broad otherwise. And let's see where we are in understanding who we are serving. And why do we want to do it again? We started talking about resource optimization. And then I think we talked about being able to focus on the products and service that you want to offer and who you can serve best. And then also you can really tailor your message and make sure that you can bring up your win rate and know that you can compete. I want to encourage people and encourage the CEO. The spraying and praying really doesn't work. You can bring up your close rate substantially by just focusing in and honing in on the most important vertical. And you know what? It could be scary. You might say it's going to be one. So I just talked to a CEO of a single-digit million dollar company, and we were having a conversation, and we work with them. And he said to me, you're right. What we're going to do is we're looking at a quarterly go-to-market. That's the other thing. You don't have to be daunted and say, I got to do this for a year.
Exactly.
Try something for a quarter. Brilliant CEO. He said, here's what we've decided, Michelle. We're going to focus on one vertical. Because what they discovered is they had over 40,000. There was a universe of 40,000 opportunities out there. Now, this will resonate with your portfolio companies. That vertical happens to be private equity. It's just, who they are selling security services and things to. And he said, look, we've got that universe. And then you can start to understand from that universe, which ones would you want to serve? So, there's big private equity firms. There's small ones. There's ones that buy companies with a particular strategy to just operationalize, bring operational efficiencies and turn it around very quickly and sell it. Others that want to scale the company and really see it grow exponentially. So it's interesting to think about as a CEO, and interesting, and I think something they can internalize is it doesn't have to be the whole universe of every segment.
Yeah, I have this conversation almost weekly, and if you think about this issue of focus is never more important than in the very beginning, because you're trying to get that, the traction, and you cannot dilute all of your effort. So you only have so much money, so much time, so many people.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll have a very nascent sales team also serving in the marketing capacity. And it's funny because when you said we don't really do marketing, but we're talking about segmentation, ICP, value prop, all of those things I actually traditionally think of in the marketing bucket in its sort of purest form. But if you think about what are the foundational building blocks that have to be done that inform marketing, that inform sales, that inform product delivery and service. These things that we're talking about. What's your value? How do who are you trying to reach? What do you say when you get there?
That's right.
How do you find them? All of those things, especially in a very early company, are correlated. And so to go through this exercise, the trying to get them to really focus and choose one, it feels very scary to them because the spray and pray feels natural, because that feels larger and there feels like there's more opportunity. And to help them understand that getting focused does exactly what you're talking about. It lets all of your material be consistent. So it's you've done this work, who this product has the most value for. There could be tons of other segments that fit, but you have to only use your resources to try to get as much momentum as you can. So the more focused you are on the one that has the greatest fit and that you know how to articulate those things, it helps inform the product. When they get on, like the baton is passed and they become a client, then their customer success person is talking to them in the same exact way about the same exact value. And that's what we're anchoring against in terms of like, are we successful in the relationship? It brings a ton of momentum to the entire company.
Yes.
So getting them to the point that they actually believe that and then they can embrace that. And part of it is exactly what you're talking about, which was you don't have to commit to this. I usually ask for a 2 to 3 quarter commitment. Let's get the engine going. All of these other segments still exist and they're going to be there at the end of this experiment, but we need to use all of our resources laser focused on the areas where we have the most opportunity for success. But I would think that all the things that you're dealing with companies that are a little further up the growth chain, they're just amplified when they're getting started. And they feel like this is a luxury, like, oh, we don't have time to spend on trying to understand that, or they make the false assumption. It's not always false. That's probably a misstatement on my part. They do know who the ICP is. The founder absolutely is crystal clear. It's just in their head and they know it. It needs to get out on paper. It needs to be shared. And everyone in the company needs to be in alignment about what is a good client and what is not, so that we don't, because the other thing that ends up happening is that they'll bring in customers that are not ideal, that the value prop is weak on, and then they have a churn problem a year down the road. And that's never good when you have a leaky bucket problem. So totally concur with everything that you're saying.
So here's a good, so I told you that our company is founder-led, right? The CEO. And he always, when it's so easy to say as an advisory firm, okay, look, we know that they need some tools. So let's develop a tool to do this. Let's develop a tool to do that, right? All of a sudden now, are we a SaaS company or are we an advisory consulting firm? It's very easy to step outside of your core and say, okay, we're going to offer something else. We could do compensation administration. I can spin up an administration tool to help companies do that, and a team. Do I want to do that or advisory consulting? All of a sudden, you risk not being good at anything.
Exactly.
And then when you, and again, you won't be able to really build a great brand presence or resonance with a client if they're not exactly sure what you're perfectly good at. You start focusing in on one or two or what your core things are. You get really good at that and you do it again and again and again. You service a vertical, you do it again and again. They start to talk about you and to you differently. You can engage with them differently. All of a sudden you're getting referrals too. It's so easy to go broad and you think, and here's the other thing. There's no risk about missing out on the universe, because what we have found is that if you think you need to hit on and reach everyone, you don't. Because in this day of the advancements of the internet and social media and everything else that's going on, they'll find you. So the RFP will still come in. The other things will still happen. It's just that what we're suggesting is that you focus on where you know you can win to get, this is what my founder, CEO likes to say, get the flywheel spinning.
Yep, get the flywheel going.
And you can't if you're off in too many different directions.
Like you said, you don't do anything well.
Yes.
And the other thing that it is sort of auxiliary happens, and I've seen it over and over, is that it galvanizes. And when you have focus as an organization, then your mission, vision, values, your purpose becomes much more clarified. And it's easier to rally the entire team because they know exactly what they're doing. When it's convoluted and you could be this to this segment and then this to this other one, or this is who we serve, and it's like 18 different personas, that's really, really hard for people to rally around. And so when you get super clear, you get super focused on the the segment, the persona that you serve best, the value, the people who have the most pain that your product or service can satisfy, then it creates a galvanizing effect with the entire organization. So the salespeople see the prospect in the exact same way as the product people see the prospect, and the customers all have, corollary needs. They share more. They look and feel and smell exactly the same. And so then that does get the flywheel going. Yeah. If you can't get that, because it's not just a marketing motion or a sales motion, it's an organizational motion.
Yes.
And when you're small and people feel very scattered, it's very, very difficult to start to get the motor going. And so focus is the only thing that gets them there. And so, but convincing a founder who has operated in the last 3 years, and obviously they've never met a prospect that they can't serve, and they've never met a problem that they can't solve. And so those are the great things, that they're innovators, they're optimists, and they see opportunity everywhere that they look. So it's like taking that and then instilling discipline as an organization.
Yes.
That can really sort of make the difference. And those are the things that set you up for scale. And the things we're talking about today are essential front-end motions that have to be done, because, again, they're going to waste so much time. And we've seen it set companies back years and millions of dollars in waste.
That's what we see. We see a waste of dollars and resources. We see them going backwards. It's really unfortunate. CEOs need to remember something. They're a CEO for a reason, and they're not going to hire 100 CEOs. I would completely agree that they can sell to anyone, anything. They've got magic superpowers. That's why they're the CEO. It's
not transferable, right?
And it's not transferable. And what you want, you just said it, is you need to build something that's scalable. The other thing that I think is really important to understand is just how technology has evolved, and now with AI, how you engage with your buyer. And this is why this focus is so important from the perspective of the frontline salesperson and sales management and leadership and the messaging. The conversation has completely changed. Nobody even needs to know anymore about your product and service. They already know. They probably know by the time they talk to you.
Right.
We already know. They already know the top 3 to 5 providers.
They've already scoured your website. They've read the white papers. They've looked at all your testimonials. And the reason that they're reaching out is because you're on the short list.
That's it. So how are you going to engage with them? Unless you know the pain point of that industry, of that buyer, and we'll talk about buyer persona, which is very different than what we're talking about right now, ICP and segmentation. That's like the entity, right? That's the location. It's the place. It's, not the person yet. That's why it's buyer persona. But anyway, when we talk about that, they are approaching, the company and then the individual with really needing to understand what are they specifically solving for, and thinking about and knowing through the talk track and through all the research and the information that you've gathered is how does your product and service solve for that? But also having the right discovery conversation. Just how they engage is completely different. And salespeople, that's new. They don't know how to do that necessarily. And I would say that younger people coming up are probably even more challenged with that a little bit, because they think all the answers are on social media, right? And they don't know how to really dig down. I'm noticing this with my own children who are in their early 20s, having that discovery conversation, and they're entering the workforce and understanding what pain points are and how they can meet that. They don't know how to do it. So all of this work that we're talking about, this foundation, is really there to also equip the frontline salesperson to have the right conversation to a buyer.
Right. Yeah, and it's actually a really good point, because, we've all read the stats that like 75% of the buying decision, I don't know what the percentage is now, is already made before they reach out. If you think about it, as the next generation of buyers come up, it's probably going to get even higher, because they are accustomed to doing so many purchases without any interaction.
Exactly.
And we're of the era that if once you can do all the research, but once I get to the buying decision,
Right.
I'm going to talk to a person. I'm even like, I just recently bought appliances, and there was no way I was going to make that large of a purchase without making a call and saying, okay, these are the things I have. Do I have all the right trim kits? And, just making sure. Whereas I'm absolutely certain that my children would have no qualms of they would buy a car online. And those, like, as we see the next generation come up, I'm sure that it just gets amplified. The amount of things that we have to do from a marketing perspective and meeting them where they're at, and informing that decision without the human element, even more as we sort of go into the next decade.
You're right. It's just before pre-pandemic, the big challenge and what B2B, because this is a lot what we're talking about, at the C level, the challenge was, how do I provide a good omni-channel experience in the B2B world? We were just starting it in B2C. Think about, the Amazon experience or going into a retail store, just this omni-channel world that we're in. Well, now that's table stakes. Now it's, how do I make it frictionless for them, right? From the perspective of a salesperson, and so they can engage anywhere that they would like to and how they'd like to. And we're reaching out to them with the right messaging, because all the research is done, all the product specs are there. Like, that's not really what we're talking about. And it's interesting how that's evolving too. What we're hearing is it's getting a little tactile. So demos are becoming more important now. Things that, and
probably
at the same time, self-service.
Yes,
self-serve demos. So it's like you're thinking, not the old world demo where everybody goes, flies into the office and they put it up on the screen, but how do I provide an experience for someone to engage in? It's a whole new world, and it's continuing to evolve. So again, that speaks to why focus is so important in order to win.
And just understanding that person inside and out, so that you can nail all the things that like speak to that person. Because as you said, as it's evolving, it used to be sort of old school, like, get them on the phone, don't tell them anything about pricing, don't commit to anything. And you're going to go through a discovery call where you can identify what their pains are, and then you can tell them and teach them how this product services, and then sell on value. And then that way the price isn't as important. I would say that paradigm is shifted because of the fact that if you're not talking about it on the places that they're going to get educated, your website, all your white papers, if like value is not, if you're not leading with that and they can't make the correlation themselves, you might not make that list. You're not going to get that chance. So it's not that part of the sort of traditional sales process isn't necessary. It's just that it's also necessary, like online, in a way that it has never been before, because they even go further into the buying process on their own and prefer it that way.
They do. And what's been incredible has been how quickly the change has taken place. When we think about the different industrial revolutions that have taken place, and we think about how long they took place, well, now in this age of AI and the way that we consume and get information, it happens so rapidly. Within 20 years, 30 years, things have happened. And in 5 years, that took 100 years before, or 50 or more years. So it's just amazing to me, the rate of change.
Yeah,
and
it's exponential.
It's been exponential, and it's going to continue to be so. So what we even saw over the past 5 years is happening faster.
Yep.
So again, it gets back to, let's go back to some of the fundamentals around focus. Should we talk a little bit about the buyer, and then really why all this is even important, but the buyer persona?
Absolutely.
So what's the difference, right? The difference is, now I'm talking about a person. Who am I selling to? And, it could be a CEO, it could be the head of IT, it could be anyone, it could be HR that you're selling to. So I'll parallel my business. We could be selling to any of those people. A CFO is trying to figure out why, they have no margins, or he or she might believe that the pay plans are paying out too much. People are just earning too much and they're just not selling. That could be his pain point. The head of HR might be calling because their pain point could be, oh my gosh, we've got about 500 titles out there in within the sales organization. I don't even know how to tie this back to our pay levels anymore and career progression. And are we even paying our people competitively? The salesperson or the sales CRO might be saying, I can't get any budget, and I need to build a case to grow, or whatever the case might be. You're dealing with different buyers. And so again, you want to look at who did you sell to and who is your target that you want to sell to. And you're asking yourself some interesting questions about them. So I'll bring in one that sounds like a stretch. So we have a company that sells sports apparel and equipment into high schools and colleges. And their buyer are coaches, athletic directors, right? And so, when we think about, all right, let's look at your buyer persona. What did they buy last year? And then we also, then want to say, okay, what are some of their pain points? And then what is it that you offer? And when we talk about pain points, it's not even relative to the uniforms that they're buying, but it's the school that they're serving. And it's their own aspiration for their own lives and careers even at that school. It seems so odd that you would ask that, but I'm going to give you something real. So this particular client, what we know is that they use a certain amount of their profits they set aside, and they work with schools that are more disadvantaged. They work with them on branding and painting and building mascots and building school spirit, because what they've learned through the years is that kids that have school spirit and that are involved in a school, they can get around like a mascot and a meaning of that school, and there's purpose. It impacts graduation rates exponentially. And secondly, it has a huge impact on decreasing suicide rates, which unfortunately have been on the rise in high school. So they can go in there, and what do they find out about this particular school? They're talking to the coach, and the coach needs, new backboards, or the coach needs, because the lights have been blinking and they're out. Or, you walk through the high school and you notice all the walls are gray, and their mascot you know about, but the mascot's not there. So you can offer to them, you know what, we can give you some painting services. We'll bring some people in and put some mascots there. You've solved one problem. The other thing they do is to address team spirit is they'll subsidize like a Chick-fil-A night, right, for the team win. And they'll go out there, their salespeople will be handing out Chick-fil-A sandwiches. But then it gets deeper. We were actually doing an account planning session up in New Jersey. And we were pushing this salesperson like, I can't sell him. I can't sell him anything more. Like, I don't know why we can't break in. And I said, okay, well, what's important to the coach? What is important? Well, when I talked to him last time, I know that he wants to be principal. Now we're getting somewhere, right? What is important to this person in order for that person to become principal? And the lights went on, right? And we started thinking about how it's not just uniforms anymore.
Yeah, how do we make him look good? How do we make him a hero within the organization?
Yeah, that's it.
How do we make him a leader amongst his other peers? And then, as you said, like the surface level is very evident, which is we need uniforms.
Right.
So then sort of the secondary piece of that is we need infrastructure around our sports and athletics. And we can identify those, and those are easy things. But if you then say, okay, now we're going to go 2 or 3 levels deeper, what do you deeply care about personally becoming principal? What does that entail? It also entails making sure that the school has spirit, you seen as the leader of generating more activity around students having confidence in their school and coming to class and graduating. All of those things are undercurrents and necessary skills for a principal.
You got it. So the lights went on. He was able to connect the dots. Our BDR, so BDRs for them, They were going in cold, right? These are schools that they have not been able to penetrate. And so they were greenfield. And he got the call. He got the information. He became one of the biggest evangelists for BDRs and why you wanted to go through this process. So it gets a little personal. It gets a little odd for some people. But what's interesting is we talked about the next generation coming up. If anything, they're personal.
Right.
They put everything out there. And they'd love nothing more than for you to help solve their work problem.
Well, I will say that the transparency in the line between business and personal is very, very fluid.
You gotta be careful. Yes, you're right.
Also a mother of young adults. So
yeah, that's a challenge.
Speak to that, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if my children have discovered yet or if it resonates that what's out there they can't take back. But I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that they don't understand the implications. Yeah. And quite frankly, I don't know if they will be the same implications as we're accustomed to because everyone does that, And so I wonder if like that becomes so normalized that our sensitivity to it as a society, like will they as older adults judge their peers for things that they did as younger adults if they can identify with it, So for us, it's like horrifying what people do. And we've certainly seen instances where it's come back to bite people who run for political office or, are CEOs of companies and then are later removed to do the things coming up. It's like, will it or will it not be the same level of scrutiny as we experience today? So I guess to be determined.
It's really interesting, isn't it? So, why are we even talking about this segmentation, ideal client profile, and all this stuff? Obviously, we're talking about focus. But when we think about, you had asked me a question about, how this kind of all ties together.
Well, and I was going to ask you, you had mentioned earlier about tools. So, if it's an early company and people are listening, they're like, you know what? You've convinced me. I need to actually put some motions towards doing this and give this a little time.
Yes.
But we can't afford Michelle, and we've got a consultant to come in, and we only have, a couple dozen customers, but we really need to figure out where we need to focus. Do you have any tools or frameworks that you would recommend to somebody who is just kind of getting started in this?
So what we're going to do is make sure that you have something specific for your portfolio companies. But here are a couple things. You can go, of course, to SalesGlobe's website, and we've got all kinds of blogs, white papers, and information. But it's a couple of fundamentals. One is we start talking about this revenue roadmap. And that is basically how companies should start and the different things they need to think about. And we say it starts with getting insight on you, right? Your company, your products and services you offer, your competitors, and of course, the customers you serve. And then that helps you then and informs what your segmentation is going to look like, your value proposition, how you want to go to market at the broader sense, meaning the different channels, your marketing, direct sales, your online presence. And really, as you start to formulate that and your segmentation, then you can talk about your coverage model. A coverage model is simply how our people, right? The structure that we have in place, the sales process, what that looks like, and then finally, the enablement that they need, tools, training, development. Because what we find is that there's a lot of expense on maybe saying we need CRM, when the issue might be we haven't segmented our clients. Right. So let's start with the fundamentals and work our way down. So we've got that. But also a very simple template, Christy, that I put together that helps walk them through how they can identify the ideal client profile, the segmentation, and then finally your addressable market. So they don't want to look at, I don't want to look at a total addressable market. That's the entire greenfield that's out there in white space available. They might want to look at their service, what's called SAM, the serviceable addressable market. And that would be, who can we actually go after, right? And it goes down from there to like minimal viable, who do we need to service to keep our doors open? We don't want to go there. But and actually a good way of looking at that and how you can access that pretty simply, I'd love to be able to provide that to them.
Awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate that. We love a good tool. So, but I think that if we can ever just get people started in a framework that helps them start the conversation. Because again, giving focus to it and priority to it is super important, but like helping them get off, dead center is also super helpful. So we very much appreciate the tool and that you're generous enough to share it with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the BIP Ventures Extraordinary Pursuits podcast. Check the show notes on our blog for the resources we discussed. You can find Extraordinary Pursuits on your favorite audio platform. Be sure to subscribe to the BIP Ventures YouTube channel and connect with us on LinkedIn, X, and Instagram so you get all the stories, learnings, and ideas for ways to thrive in the innovation economy. And if you liked this episode, be generous. Share it.